Non-Muslims and of course Muslims alike are aware that restrictions on what should and shouldn't be eaten exist. And in this episode, we are going to be looking at 10 most haram foods in the religion of Islam. Alright, so let's jump in. Starting at number 10, we have beast with canine teeth and claws. So there's a hadith that comes from Ibn Abbas, and it says that Allah's messenger prohibited to eat every beast of prey that has a canine tooth and every bird that has a claw. And this was reported by Imam Muslim. And speaking of canines, let's specifically get into dogs. See, as for dogs, it's impure to eat them according to the majority of scholars. Also, according to the hadith, Abu Hurairah reported that the Prophet Muhammad said these words: "Purifying a container that a dog has licked is done by washing it 7 times. So that's just the dog licking it. It's completely forbidden. So imagine eating it. How much more forbidden that is, if that is such a thing. Either way, dogs, things that dogs lick, prohibited. The next food is ducks who eat impurities. As for the meat of ducks, it's generally not considered haram, but it's frowned upon to eat the meat of a duck that eats impurities. So Muslims have to make sure that they prevent a duck from eating impurities and then to feed it also with cleaner foods, just so that the duck, if you're planning to eat it, will be considered halal or permissible to eat. Donkeys come in at number 7. Now this reference to donkeys is taken from the hadith, and this hadith was narrated by Abu Thalaba, and it says, Allah's messenger prohibited the meat of donkeys. Plain and simple, pretty straightforward. Alright, so we're moving on to number 6 in this episode. All animals that are not slaughtered in Allah's name are prohibited. So animals slaughtered in the name of anyone but God or Allah, or if they have been dedicated or offered and sacrificed to an idol or a saint or another person, they are completely prohibited. It's forbidden. It is haram. Continuing to number 5, carrion. Carrion, which is pretty much carcasses of dead animals that weren't killed by people or pets that were trained for hunting. That is something that Muslims are told to stay away from. That meat is completely haram. Kind of also tying into number 5 is number 4, and this is about animals who violently lost their lives. So an animal that has been strangled or beaten until it passes away, or it dies because it fell from a high cliff or something, or if it was completely savaged by another animal, that meat is considered haram, so Muslims should avoid that. But there is an exception though. Unless the final blow delivered to this animal where it lost its life was delivered by a human being, then it could be permissible or halal. Number 3, blood. Blood is also a big one. Blood is defined as haram, and therefore it's forbidden to Muslims. The Islamic method actually of killing an animal for meat is called zabiha. After the slaughterer recites the blessing that you're supposed to speak over the animal, they use a very sharp surgical knife or some other very sharp instrument to slice the animal's throat, and that way the blood is allowed to drain from the body, so the animal dies in a very, very, very peaceful manner. And the whole point is for all the blood to drain away, because blood contains impurities and therefore Muslims are forbidden to eat it. Pigs come in at number 2. Probably all, even non-Muslims, know this, but this is actually taken from the Quran, Surah 5 verses 3, that says, "Forbidden for you are carrion and blood and flesh of swine, and that which has been slaughtered while proclaiming the name of any other than Allah, and one killed by strangling, and one killed with blunt weapons, and one which died by falling, and that which has been gored by the horns of some animal, and one eaten by a wild beast, except those whom you slaughter, and that which is slaughtered at the altar, and that which is distributed by the throwing of arrows for an omen. This is an act of sin." So that kind of pretty much covered every single type of haram meat that we mentioned in this episode. Well, the main thing you're supposed to get from that is pigs, all form of pork, all form of gelatin that comes from pigs, all of that is haram. Number 1, probably no surprise, is alcohol. This is a big prohibition that exists in the religion of Islam. And as a matter of fact, it stems from the Quran, Surah 5, verses 90. And that goes as follows. O you who have believed, indeed intoxicants, gambling, sacrificing on stone altars to other than Allah, and divining arrows are but defilement from the work of Satan. So avoid it that you may be successful. So alcohol is an intoxicant, and this also goes for food that is prepared with alcohol. There's some schools of thought though that say if you have a very slight amount of alcohol that's used to prepare the food where you can't get intoxicated from, then it is halal. But for the most part, generally speaking, all Muslims consider alcohol as haram according to the Quran. So that does it for this episode on the 10 worst haram foods in Islam. I just want to reiterate the points that according to the Quran, the only foods explicitly forbidden are meat from animals that die of themselves, as well as blood, the meat of swine, animals dedicated to anyone other than Allah, or animals that are undedicated, and again other restrictions that I mentioned in this video. But all vegetarian cuisine is completely halal and allowed for all Muslims.